Go in the middle.
So I hope you all enjoyed your lunch. No time for carb slumps. We're on to our next panel of the day on everybody's favourite subject, no code, low code. And continuing the theme of bizarre titles, this panel comes with a strapline like Frankie said, I did it my way, a reference no doubt to the powerful self-serve capabilities of the low-code platforms. Shaz Aziz is chairing. You've heard from him already, so you know you're in very good hands. So Shaz, please come up and introduce your panel to us.
Hi everybody. This panel is going to be fairly free-flowing, but also a little bit of an explanatory panel as well, because the concept of no-code and low-code, I think some of you will know and be aware of, but many of you won't. So we want to make sure that we're really helping you understand what we're talking about before we go into the details of it. I'm Shaz, and you've heard from me already. And to my left, I've got Jessica, Paul, Alice, and Jerome. So you've got two no-code people on the end. You've got Techie in the middle, and you've got two in-house people as well. So hopefully we'll get every angle of this. But I think, we start at the beginning. What are we talking about? What is no-code? What is low-code? Why do we ever use those things? And we've got low-code as well up there, which is very similar. But maybe Paul, what is the difference between these two things? What's no-code and what's low-code?
I think that essentially you've got like no-code platforms, which in some ways, particularly in my background coming from CRM and in the Microsoft Power Platform, it started a little bit off like we've got workflow, right? And application consultants can build workflow. So it's just like a developer, but they're not writing code. But I think really that's evolved to the point where it's not just a case of, all right, you need a less technical techie to do stuff. It's more you can actually involve the customer and go, oh, what's your business process? And we can sketch this out a little bit like Visio, but rather than it just being a Visio diagram that doesn't sort of do much on its own, you're actually mapping those building blocks into the system and doing that alongside the customer. So the customer understands the tools as much as actually helping build things. And then that kind of, rather than just being low code, which is kind of almost like, well, you just need, as I said, less techie really. You get no code solutions, which means the customer can be actually involved in building those processes. And suddenly the business and technology is far more aligned than just a case of going, oh, well, this workflow happens to be getting things done without writing lines of code. And I think that's the crucial difference between no code and low code. The customer can be involved in creation of essentially their business process and the technology that drives that, rather than some techie coming in and kind of doing the techie bits, which sometimes that'll be a very hardcore developer. So I've done obviously huge amounts of hardcore development. Like, brilliant. Here's where the if and else and statements are, which obviously people are not largely interested in. But then you've got that middle ground of workflow, and then nowadays that no code changes things dramatically to the point where the customer is really involved in those tools, not just what those tools actually are.
It's almost, you're improving the access to get techie, really. You're making the techie part of it less techie, so anyone can get involved.
Yeah, it's like the diversification or the democratization even of technology, where everybody's involved in it because it's running the whole world. You can't really, it's not really like the 90s anymore where like, oh, there's the techie people, there's the non-techie people. Everybody's kind of a techie person. And so the more democratization you have of those tools, the more people can be involved in how the world works, rather than have the people who get it and the people who don't get it. And then that's, like the old Hollywood thing, do that again in English. Rather than do that, it's like, well, everybody should be understanding this. It shouldn't just be some people get it and some people don't.
That's interesting. We'll take a quick poll. Who here thinks that they would be able to use a no-code tool the next time? Who thinks they'd be capable of doing it? It's pretty good.
And I reckon that's really interesting. So I reckon if you went a couple of years ago, it'd be a lot less. Absolutely. I think every year for the last 4 or 5 years, that number would be creeping up a little bit.
So that word it doesn't really mean it. No code. It just means no code. It's not telling you anything about what's actually being done within the business. But if you feel confident that you can do it, you can do it. It's not, it's just a mental barrier really that needs to get over. I think that's probably what the experience has been in companies. I mean, we've got someone here who uses a no-code tool in the business. I know this for sure, which is Alice. Alice, tell us about that experience. I mean, why did you go down that route? Why did you go for a no-code tool?
Yeah, so sort of just to give a bit of background, not to bore everyone too much. Back in 2018 was when we started our sort of digital DX, sort of whatever word you want to use, that journey where we really started saying technology is going to be a part of function, it's going to be a key resource that we're going to use going forward. And in 2018, like with most people, the can change, but we had no really dedicated capability, we had no budget, we didn't really have any buy-in. So we spent the first year sort of getting that low-hanging fruit and getting people involved along the journey and getting their buy-in. And once we'd done that, we thought, well, what can we do that's a bit more exciting? Because all of these initial things we've done have been, getting reporting tools in, really important, but it's not very jazzy, it's not very exciting, it doesn't really get people sort of looking to the future about what we could do. And one of the things that we were asked to do was look at how we can standardise how we measure risk in our new deals. So when we're contracting for new business, looking at how we can make sure that the lawyers are all doing the same thing and they're all giving us the same output, which was not consistent at all in how it was being managed. And so we thought, well, this could be a tech solution. This is a great example of where we can use tech to really look at how we are doing something and try and automate it, but not just going, this is what the lawyers are doing, how do we automate that? It's going, how can we recreate a system that can do this, that rethinks it? And we initially, obviously, we did the build versus buy, and we went out and looked, and there just wasn't anything on the market that did what we needed to do. So then we looked at, can we build this, or do we need to give this to a third party to build? And we just had no budget. We could not go and we could not ask someone to build it for us. So then it came back to, we need to build this, but we had no development capability and we had no budget to resource for that. So that's when we started looking at the low-code, no-code platforms, and that's when I met Shaz, who works in IOTA, and we looked at lots of platforms, and we looked at platforms that we could build this thing that we need to do, but also has the scope and capability to be able to build future tools that we don't know what we need. So we were really looking for that flexibility. And what we did was, once we decided the platform we were going with, in that first week, we managed to build a proof of concept. So in 1 week, we trained in how to use the tool, and we built our proof of concept, which went to Japan and went to our senior stakeholders to be sort of approved to say, yes, we can do this. We can we can digitize this risk in deals, and we can produce you a tool which can analyze that and then output that in a way that you as lawyers and the business can read. And that for us, that first week really sort of sold us on the no-code, low-code solutions, where we realised we can build this stuff in-house. We don't need lots of expensive developers. We don't need lots of expensive third parties. And it's incredibly agile and an incredibly quick way to build tools and technology. It isn't this big bang of, oh, we're going to get someone external and they're going to build something, and then when we take that to you to review, it's wrong and we haven't met the brief. It's a way that we can develop, and we can develop in an agile way, and we can get people's buy-in along the route. And just quickly, I think, really picking on what Paul was saying, it's a way that we can get all of our legal practitioners involved in the development. So because it's building blocks, it's code behind building blocks, but we don't see the code. We can have these building blocks on a big whiteboard, we can have it, and we can talk people through it, we can draw arrows. So it's a very visual way that people can understand what you're trying to develop. So for us, it's now become one of sort of the key technology capabilities in our business. We have our IT platforms and we use no code.
Well, so just take a step back and look at why we're doing this. I think also what Paul said about, there used to be people who knew tech and people who don't know tech. And I think that is also how lawyers have been working before. So we have kind of said to the business traditionally that don't do anything without coming to us first, because we're the only ones who actually understand this, and it's very complicated. So reach out to us. But now we're a team of 23 lawyers supporting a business of 7,000 employees, more than 7,000, and 9 million customers. We don't have time to be that person on the other side answering questions when they call, to get involved in every single issue. So we turned it around and we said, we will give you all the tools that you need to carry out your work without us manually interfering in that. So that was the starting point. And then we had to try to just look for the solutions. So we're trying to automate everything that can be automated. So if we get a question for the second time, we automate it. And then we need to find the best solution for every area. And that is, of course, we've used trial and error. so to speak. So to find the optimal solution is not maybe done the first time we try, but then we're using different, and that is also the beauty of all these new solutions. It's easy to work with many of them. So we work with chatbots, we work with interactive guides, we produce Q&As, and we produce movies, and we try to find just the tool that the business needs. But then there are also challenges in getting the business to understand that they need this. And we have met comments like, yes, I worked in Nordea for 25 years, and the best thing is that I can always call a lawyer. And then to be the person saying that, yeah, I'm about to reduce that possibility, or take that possibility away from you. Then of course people are a bit skeptical at first, but then it's important to actually convince the business that we're not only doing this because we want to put our resources at other things or to save costs. That is also a benefit of using the new tools, but we're mostly actually doing it to increase our service level. We will make sure that they have everything they need and they will have it 24/7.
What else have you noticed about, what does the lawyer of the future look like? Everyone jumps in here, but what does that person look like now? What do they need to be good at? Why is that, and how is that different from the past?
One thing also you talked about earlier today, I think, every lawyer needs to understand that we have the design principles in our toolbox. I think that will be very different. I don't think that used to be the case.
I suppose I imagine it's in many ways that probably Google changed, particularly technological people worked, where when Google came on the scene, you get a whole lot of skills of how do you find information, how do you use particular tools. And I imagine for lawyers, obviously I'm a techie myself, so I can't speak entirely, but I imagine for lawyers knowing how to find information, how to work with certain processes, and how to engage with technical people will be a hugely more important skill than presumably it was like 20, 30 years ago. It's just, well, we need to be an expert in legal, that's my thing. Whereas now, I imagine how you engage with technology is a much bigger part of the job, and that's probably true in a whole load of industries now, with the way the world's changed.
Alice, I know by background you're an engineer, you're not a lawyer. Have you seen that change in the legal people that you deal with over there?
Yeah, I think unfortunately for lawyers these days, the base expectation is that you'll be good at being a lawyer. And whereas I think that used to be enough, I now think you need to be good at being a lawyer, but you also need to sort of have you don't even need to have the skills to be able to work with technology, but you need to have the right mindset and you need to have the right sort of culture about you, that you will be open to these things. And when they are presented to you, you don't just shut them down. You're really receptive to them, and you learn about how they can work and how they can make things better. And I think in order for the legal sector to evolve, which it is definitely doing, people need to all have that mindset. And one thing we do in our company is we now have a team which is sort of focused on this sort of technology and DX, and we want to have a rotation where all the lawyers have to come through, but they just learn about it and they learn about those things outside of sort of that very specific legal information. So we have data analysis, we have legal operations, we have just legal knowledge managers and things like that. And I think that having that experience and going through all those different areas will really round the sort of future lawyer of tomorrow. And I think that's what will be really, really beneficial to the sector and allowing us to grow.
I think it's also important that we are more collaborative and humble as lawyers and understand that we also need other competences to team up with them.
Yeah.
So to understand tech more and design principles or other useful things, but even more to also, partner with people who do understand that.
Yeah, I think I go on a lot of these things and I get introduced as I'm not a lawyer. People are like, she's not a lawyer, and I'm not a lawyer. But I work in the legal space. You could call it legal practitioner, you could call it anything, but I've worked in the legal space for a while now. And so I'm not a lawyer, but there's a lot of people like me out there that are trying to make your jobs easier and are trying to make the access to your services easier. And I think it's having a much more broader view of what legal and what lawyers are.
Yeah, I think there's some overlap with like the technology sector, because I've come from a technical background where you give me a technical problem, I'll go away and solve it. But that solving a technical problem isn't necessarily a product. It isn't something you would offer to your customers. It's just a skill that you get for a period of time. And ultimately, selling time is always tricky, where you've got like legal design, where you look at what is the product we actually sell and how is that the skill of a lawyer, which obviously you never get, you're never going to replace that, but the skill of a lawyer backed up by various technical products, and then you wrap that and go, that's our legal product that we offer to people. And that concept of how do we sell that product and how do we work with that product is probably again key to a lot of industries where it's not just a person anymore. You don't just get somebody by the hour, you're getting somebody by the hour backed up by various technologies that mean that they're much more than just a person that you can have for a period of time.
I think what you said as well is when you want to get lawyers in and make them aware of what's happening in the industry and with tech, what you see happening with people like you and teams like you, they create ideation sessions, invite lawyers to those ideation sessions and make them aware of what's happening in the industry and get their opinion, make them part of the development process. We don't expect lawyers today to build applications from A to C, even though it's no code, but they want to be part of it, and that's what you see across the industry right now.
Yeah, I think with the big strength now, and it's taken the industry probably best part of a decade to really get there, is that once you introduce certain concepts, and I've seen this in quite a few of our clients, once you've introduced the concept, because it's transparent in how it all works, it's not sort of mystery development that's going on somewhere else, they can then grab that, look at how you're developing that product, how you're building it, and then bring it into their own innovation teams. So they can then go, well, we can take what you've started here, you've given us the kind of rocket fuel to get going, but we can then take that on and move that with the business. Because you, as this technology company over here, are not going to understand our case management, you're not going to understand all these different funds that we work with. But we do, we understand that, so I'd meet and drink. So we can take that technology platform and then put it to use for the real business knowledge that we've got and you don't. And so you're bringing in the right skills from the business and from technology providers. And low-code platform, I mean, that's been the holy grail for a lot of CRM and user adoption for years, but low-code platforms actually allow that to happen, where I think sometimes as a techie, I've been talking about that for 10 years, but it's a bit kind of there, but not there 10 years ago, whereas nowadays I actually see that day to day, lots of companies actually engaging and doing that as a strategy, like IT as a strategy, alongside the business, rather than being two different things, occasionally meeting in the middle at different points. Yeah, I think so, very much so. I think because people can then look at, rather than just go, hey, look, what do? We do matter management, we do case management, go and buy me a product that does case management and matter management, where then fundamentally bits of your business you're buying in from somewhere else, you're going to do it the same way everybody else does it, because that's what the product does. Really, you see more and more people going, well, how do we do it? Let's put ourselves in that. Obviously, we'll maybe have the traditional requirements to begin with, but once we've kind of got that relationship between us and one or two other tech companies that are helping us meet those, we can see how that's taking place, and we can then put our business into that technology product, and the two marry up together. So the business is essentially the business and technology are moving at the same time. Whereas historically, going back to maybe 5-10 years ago, the business would always be way out ahead of the technology. The business would move and would invent new business processes, new ways of working, new products of how we would sell our legal services, and then we'd be running around getting technology companies to come and keep pace with us. And so then inevitably the business comes first, then the technology. Whereas nowadays, when you can buy people into those platforms, they can see what the technology is capable of, and then the business moves with the technology. They might be like one out slightly ahead of the other, but they're much more in sync than the business going, this is how our business should operate, and let's go and find somebody who can help us get the technology that does the plumbing. The two can actually move together, and that then allows the business to be much more agile and learn, as a business inevitably does, learn how it moves through the market and what market they're moving through.
Yeah, I guess when you're trying to, say for example, you want to build something for the legal team, do you have like a agile a process that you go through with them, and you get feedback and workshops and sessions and that kind of thing?
Yeah, 100%. So I think I've already sort of touched on it. I think when people think of tech things, they think I've got to go away and I've got to build this whole thing in one go, and then I've got to show everyone that it's working and it's the platinum standard. And I'm definitely guilty of that. My team are definitely guilty of that. And I think we've learned over the years that it's much better to try and prototype things through sort of time and get people's buy-in at every single stage. So you want people involved when you're at the concept stage. You want people to input into what they're looking for. You're really looking at the business outcomes rather than trying to look at sort of all those inputs. And once you've got those outcomes, you've got your requirements. It's then at each point saying, well, this is what we've achieved, is it correct? And getting people's buy-in. I think today we've been talking about buy-in and stakeholder buy-in loads, and we absolutely couldn't achieve what we've managed to achieve without having the buy-in. And the only way we've got buy-in from people is by doing it in very small little increments over a number of years, starting off really easy and then getting more complex and more difficult.
Yes, we have. So, and we have also, I think it's a mix of doing it in breaking it down, taking small steps, and then still be consistent. And have short feedback loops. So when it comes to legal design, it's really about making everything that we produce user-friendly and accessible. And that is also, I mean, to make sure that it's effective, the advice that we give. People need to understand it. And then we need to have that in mind in everything that we create. And we are trying to combine the tech and visual design with the legal expertise and constantly, well, starting small, starting with the areas where we get the most recurring questions, and to see that people actually understand it and they're willing to, then use the tools that we produce. So, yes, we're trying, but this is also very new, and it's new to us, and it's a new way to go about the problems. So we're on a learning curve. Well, the first thing was that when I found out and said that, okay, you will now be supported by a chatbot, and you will not be able to call us for these questions, people have, or some people have been very skeptical. But when we have actually been out and demoed the chatbot and just showed them exactly how they can use it, it has changed, and then there are one conversation leading to another, and it has kind of solved itself. But it needs to be, of course, good enough for that to happen. But then I think the bigger culture change has been also in our team to start with working with these things and to convince lawyers that this is actually the way to go, and we can provide better support, and we can be shorter and crisper, and even add visual design to convey the legal advice. That has been a change in itself, because we are, of course, very scared we're risk averse, right? And we want to cover all bases and make sure that nothing is overlooked. And then if we do that and present any legal communication, it will be very hard to understand it on the outside.
I mean, I think we've had the same cultural challenges that everyone has had and everyone is facing when it comes to technology. And we've had a whole panel talking about how we've overcome those. But I think, one of the things we try to do is we try to be transparent. So be transparent with the data, be transparent with the outcomes of the tools and the technologies. So what we've created is a suite of dashboards where people can really see how they're being used, what benefits that's having, how much time's being saved, how much money's being saved. So it's very easy for someone to sit there and use a tool and go, I don't see why me doing this one thing is going to make any difference. But then we've got just in the UK, we've got 7,000 people, and globally we've got over 100,000. Every single person is doing that thing. The time saving, the cost saving, the overall outcomes are so tangible and measurable, and we can show that. So there will always be cultural challenges, there will always be people who are resistant, but it's identifying ways that you can try and get people on board and get people to really buy into your outcomes, rather than trying to sort of just force them to use it because they're being told to use it.
Yeah, I think having the outcomes of any sort of technology, which often get forgotten, as we said, does it work? Brilliant, it works great. But having seen the outcomes of how much people are using it, what they're getting out of it, and having that feedback loop is crucial, because then any innovation team in a sort of legal company can then sort of see, right, this is the outcomes of why we're doing, why we're recruiting all these technical companies and put all this time in, and people can see the benefits of that. And that does often get forgotten a little bit. But yeah, it's absolutely crucial for that innovation team to carry on going and carry on pushing innovation, rather than being a one-stop shop and we're done.
If you were to start again with the no-code tools.
Okay. I can jump in. I think the biggest one for me would always be, because I said that I think going up from where IT solutions have come from is a very transactional relationship, like a lot of other like service providers, or when you're buying a product in, we go out to market, we find the best people, we spend say 100 grand, we get product A, put product A in the business, done. And that's it, it's very transactional nature. I think the biggest cultural takeaway for a lot of companies, and I think a lot of companies have got this, but some, it's still a learning process, is not doing that and almost going, right, I'm going to go and find maybe multiple technology providers. It doesn't have to all come from one guy. You find the best people at the best kind of skill sets, involve X number of technology providers, and then do that over time, get the trusted relationships. Some ideas you'll put in the business and they'll work brilliantly, particularly if you understood the culture of the business, where it is today and where it wants to get to. Some ideas won't work, and that's okay, because you're on a learning process. That's how business evolves in all shapes and forms. Put that sort of culture to use. Use the providers who really work for you, don't use the providers who don't work for you, and evolve that over time. See it as a proper, I'm not a big fan of the word journey, but see it as like a process that you're doing in the business, like any other innovation you would do in the business, rather than that transactional relationship, right? We go and buy product A, does B, thank you very much, that one we're done. See it as like a journey over time, because the technology providers are all changing constantly. They're all fighting with each other. Microsoft competing with Google, Amazon, all the rest of it. So they're always changing as well. The business obviously never stays still. I've yet to see many businesses that stay still. And having that cultural shift, I think, is crucial for a lot of people, rather than that kind of, we buy a product and then do stuff with it.
Yes, I think for me, I wouldn't do anything differently, because I think the biggest thing with the no-code, low-code is you have to go through a fairly fun, but also a little bit painful journey on what works and what doesn't, particularly if you don't come from a technical background, because of course it's going to have loads of training in how you should build things, what's the right way to build them, how do you support them, and we don't have that going into it. So you have to sort of, I think, one, make sure you put aside enough time to just go through that learning journey. I think the other key takeaway that we have taken is that you need to make it sustainable and you need to make it long term. And in order to do that, you need to make sure it's got support. It's very easy with these no-code, low-code platforms to build something internally and not look at the support structure around that. And if that happens, then you're going to get one of these tools which loads of time and potentially money gets put into. It'll be great for a month, and 2 years down the line, people will be going, oh, do you remember that tool that didn't work out? And in order for that not to happen, you need to make sure that you've got the way for it to be supported, so things like break fix, but also to evolve it. So as the market evolves, as the processes evolve, you need to make sure that your tool evolves with that. And I think that's something we've really learned, where as Fujitsu and as the team, we've built a few things which at the moment, they work, they absolutely work, the output is correct. Behind the scenes, it's a little more ropey, and we are now having to go back, and we're having to not rebuild, but we're having to refine to make sure that if I was to leave, or if someone in my team was to leave, who is a very important point of contact, it won't fall down. So I think just make sure when you're going on this journey, think about the long term, as well as this immediate, shiny, fun new tool that you're going to have.
Yeah, I mean, low-code tools do give you, a lot of rope to hang yourself. If you only know how to do one thing, you'll do lots and lots and lots of that one thing, and that might not be the most sustainable approach. But often that's, if you get the right people at the beginning of the process who understand these processes, they can give you that best practice, and you can carry that forward. So then people know, right, if I'm doing A, this is the best way to do A. And you don't need, having a good support is brilliant, because you always want somewhere to go for queries and that kind of thing. But if you've bedded that best practice in, obviously the business can run with that best practice, and then they can bring that into themselves, rather than constantly have to go back to a technology provider to bring that in.
Yeah, when I say support, I don't necessarily mean, we use for the platform sort of updates, we obviously use them, but we have all our support internally. So yeah, support is sort of both of those uses.
Yeah, I reckon break fix support in the IT world will probably slowly but surely die a death, and that support will really become, can we reach out to these guys and ask them best practice questions? What's the best way of doing this? How do we bring that in? So you've got that kind of partner almost to what you're doing versus, oh, it's broke. Can you fix this, please?
Exactly, yeah.
I think over the years what we have learned as well is that sometimes companies just buy a low-code, no-code platform for one department, so they see that a low-code, no-code platform can work for them and build applications fast and easy. But it's more than that. It's aligning the whole company with a low-code, no-code strategy. Like, you need IT, you need business, you need innovation, you need all kinds of departments to set up a good governance model and make sure that everything runs smoothly, that you thought of everything like the design of the application, who should build, who should not build, and the whole security process underneath it. I think that's the big takeaway that I had over the last 2-3 years.
I've got a question to you that we discussed at the roundtable yesterday, and when I asked it, I had no idea what sort of answers would come back, so I'd be really interested to hear what you have to say about it. And you talked about culture earlier, and what I'd like to throw out, and you can answer it whichever way you want, what I want to throw out is the crossover between culture more generally, diversity, that, those three together, how they have impacted adoption internally.
When I talked about culture in the team and how that had to change, it was more like maybe small scale, but so we used to only hire lawyers with at least 15 years of experience, well, almost everyone was in the same age and with the same background. And we still need, dealing with a lot of consumer law in the Nordic countries, we need lawyers trained in those countries. But what we have been trying to do is to get in different competencies and have a bigger age span, and just, get people with more tech competence. We still have the strong legal skills is of course key, but it's not enough. And we could not have only the strong tech skills, but the combination, and then to also, of course, team up with others. But that has been the cultural change that I was talking about.
I think what I've found is that sometimes you get kind of like the accidental innovation culture where you've got somebody or a group of people in a firm, it could be a lawyer or it could be the marketing team, who are really open to innovation. So they kind of find a technology company, they build like this kind of accidental innovation team and then sort of hopefully does quite well and then works its way up the business. And therefore, it's a product of its own success. But you've then also got the sort of where the management can buy into that culture well ahead of the time rather than being accidental. Deliberately they go, we're going to build an innovation team, we're going to find the right people to do that, and that might be a different group of cultures. It might not just be the young people who are keen on doing that thing, it might be actually the culture they want to build. Pull that together and then deliver innovation for the business. So whether it happens organically or, you can actually make that happen if you want to bring that into the business.
I've been told that we're out of time, but I'm going to be annoying and speak a bit more questions. I think we can be nice then and say some thank you. Thank you everybody, and I hope you enjoyed that. That was useful.